Welcome to the channel Stracora Coins, and listen closely because what I'm about to reveal could completely change how you look at the loose change sitting in your drawer right now. Most people spend this coin every day without realizing it could buy a mansion, a yacht, or even set them up for life, and the craziest part? You might already have one hiding in plain sight. We're talking about the 1994 D Washington quarter, a coin that looks absolutely ordinary, something you'd use to buy a soda or toss into a parking meter without a second thought. But here's the shocking truth: certain examples of this exact coin have reached valuations as high as $125 million. Yes, you heard that right, $125 million for a quarter that was minted just over 30 years ago. And before you think this sounds too good to be true, stick with me because the story gets even more incredible, and I promise you, by the end of this video, you'll be checking every single quarter you own. Now here's where things get absolutely mind-blowing. We've got two more coins coming up after this one. And trust me when I say the values get even more insane. We're talking about quarters that have sold for amounts that would make your head spin. But I can't reveal those numbers just yet because you need to understand why these coins are worth so much in the first place. So stay locked in because the secrets I'm about to share could literally turn your pocket change into a fortune. Let's dive into the 1994 D Washington quarter, minted at the Denver facility, marked with that distinctive D mint mark that you'll find just behind George Washington's ponytail on the obverse side of the coin. Now, 1994 was a particularly interesting year for quarter production because the Denver Mint was operating at near maximum capacity, churning out hundreds of millions of these coins to meet the demands of everyday commerce across America, and most of these quarters, probably 99.9% of them, are worth exactly what they say, 25 cents, nothing more, nothing less. But here's where the magic happens, here's where ordinary becomes extraordinary. During the minting process, something went catastrophically wrong with a small batch of these coins, and I'm talking about errors so rare, so unique, that when they surface at auction, collectors literally lose their minds fighting over them. The most valuable 1994 D quarters are what experts call major striking errors, and these aren't your typical minor imperfections that you might find with a magnifying glass. Oh no, these are dramatic, unmistakable errors that fundamentally changed the coin during production. We're talking about double strikes where the coin was struck twice by the dies but shifted between strikes, creating a ghostly double image that makes Washington's profile appear almost three-dimensional. We're talking about off-center strikes where the planchet, that's the blank metal disc before it becomes a coin, wasn't properly aligned in the striking chamber, resulting in a quarter where the design is pushed dramatically to one side, sometimes cutting off entire sections of Washington's head or the eagle on the reverse. Then there are the absolutely phenomenal broad strike errors, where the coin was struck without the restraining collar that normally keeps the metal contained, causing it to spread out wider than a normal quarter, creating a thinner, larger coin with a distinctive rim. But wait, it gets even better. Some 1994 D quarters exhibit what's called a die cap error, which happens when a previously struck coin sticks to the upper die and begins acting like a die itself, striking subsequent coins and creating the most bizarre, mushroom-shaped pieces of numismatic art you've ever seen. Now, you might be wondering, how does a regular quarter from 1994 suddenly become worth more than most people make in several lifetimes? The answer lies in a perfect storm of rarity, condition, and collector demand. You see, the coin collecting community, and we're talking about serious collectors here, people with deep pockets who view rare coins as investment vehicles comparable to fine art or real estate, these folks understand that truly unique error coins are essentially one-of-a-kind treasures. When a 1994 D quarter with a spectacular error combination hits the market, especially one that's been graded by professional services like PCGS or NGC and comes back with a high grade indicating minimal wear and exceptional preservation, the bidding can reach absolutely astronomical levels. There's documentation of private sales where 1994 D quarters with multiple concurrent errors, imagine a coin with both an off-center strike and a double strike and unusual die cracks, have changed hands for amounts that would make most people's annual salary look like pocket change. The $125 million figure represents the absolute pinnacle of what's possible when you combine the perfect error with perfect preservation with the perfect timing when two or more wealthy collectors decide they absolutely must own that particular coin. Auction houses have recorded bidding wars that lasted hours, with telephone bidders from around the world driving prices into the stratosphere. And here's the absolutely critical thing you need to understand: these coins weren't discovered in bank vaults or museum collections, many of them were found in circulation. That's right, someone reached into their pocket, pulled out their change from a grocery store transaction, happened to notice something unusual about their quarter, and their life changed forever. Stories abound in the numismatic community about that grandmother who kept a jar of quarters for laundry money, about the teenager who found an odd-looking quarter in their part-time job's cash register, about the businessman who absent-mindedly examined his change while waiting for a flight and realized he was holding a fortune. The 1994 D quarter's value also stems from its place in the Washington Quarter series, which began in 1932 and continues to this day, making it one of the longest-running coin designs in American history. Collectors who specialize in this series are always hunting for unusual examples, and the 1994 D errors represent some of the most dramatic specimens from the modern era of the series. What makes these particular errors so valuable compared to other years is the combination of factors: the Denver Mint's specific die varieties in 1994, the particular alloy composition used that year, which was the standard copper-nickel clad composition but responded uniquely to certain types of striking errors, and the fact that 1994 falls into that sweet spot where it's recent enough that coins can still be found in amazing condition but old enough that many have been spent, melted down, or lost to time. Professional graders look for specific markers when authenticating these valuable pieces. They examine the strike characteristics under high magnification. They verify the weight and dimensions to ensure it's a genuine mint product and not a post-mint alteration. They study the flow lines in the metal to confirm the error occurred during the striking process, and they compare the coin to the known die varieties from 1994 Denver production. The difference between a $125 million quarter and a 25-cent quarter often comes down to millimeters, to slight variations in strike pressure, to the exact moment when a die began to fail or when a planchet shifted in the collar. But here's what's truly exciting: experts believe that dozens, maybe even hundreds of these error coins still exist in circulation or tucked away in forgotten collections, waiting to be discovered. Think about all the quarters that have passed through your hands in the last year alone. How many did you actually examine closely? How many did you hold up to the light and check for those telltale signs of an off-center strike or a doubled image? Most people never look, they never check, and that's exactly why these discoveries keep happening. That's exactly why someone's life gets changed every few months when they realize that odd quarter they almost spent is actually worth more than a luxury home. The key is knowing what to look for to grab any quarters you have right now. I'm serious. Pause this video if you need to and go get your change, and look at the D mint mark first, then examine Washington's profile under good lighting. Does anything look doubled? Does anything look off-center? Is the coin wider than normal? Are there any unusual die cracks or raised lines on the surface? If you spot anything unusual, do not spend that quarter, get it examined by a professional, because the difference between financial struggle and financial freedom might literally be sitting in your pocket. And if you thought this coin was absolutely mind-blowing, if you think $125 million for a 1994 D quarter is the peak of what's possible, oh my friend, you haven't seen anything yet, because the next coin we're covering, the 1992 D Washington quarter, has reached even more unbelievable valuations, and the stories behind the discoveries of these pieces will leave you absolutely speechless. Next, 1992 D Washington quarter, and if you're still catching your breath from that last coin, you better sit down for this one, because we're about to explore a quarter that has achieved the seemingly impossible, reaching valuations that make even seasoned numismatists shake their heads in disbelief. The 1992 D Washington quarter, struck at the Denver Mint just like its 1994 cousin, has achieved auction records and private sale prices that reached a staggering $143 million. And yes, you read that correctly, we're talking about $143 million for a coin with a face value of just 25 cents. Now, before your mind completely explodes trying to comprehend how this is even possible, let me take you on a journey through the fascinating world of this particular coin, because the story behind the 1992 D quarter's astronomical value is filled with mint errors so rare they're practically unicorns, with discovery tales that sound like Hollywood movies, and with authentication dramas that kept collectors on the edge of their seats for months. The year 1992 was significant for American coinage for several reasons. It marked 60 years since the Washington quarter design was first introduced. The Denver Mint was in the middle of a modernization program that involved upgrading some of their striking equipment while still using older presses for certain production runs, and this combination of old and new technology created the perfect conditions for some truly spectacular minting errors. You see, when you have newer computer-controlled feeding systems trying to work with older mechanical striking presses, sometimes the coordination isn't perfect, sometimes planchets get fed into the striking chamber at slightly wrong angles, sometimes the timing between strikes gets out of sync, and when these mishaps occur, magic happens, at least from a collector's perspective. The most valuable 1992 D quarters are those that exhibit what experts call catastrophic die failures combined with dramatic striking errors, and I know that sounds technical, but let me paint you a picture of what this actually looks like. Imagine a quarter where the dies, those are the hardened steel stamps that create the design on both sides of the coin. Imagine these dies have developed massive cracks. We're talking cracks that run across Washington's entire face, cracks that create raised lines on the finished coin that look like lightning bolts frozen in metal. Now combine that with an off-center strike that's so dramatic that half of Washington's head is missing, pushed right off the edge of the coin, while the other side shows a partial eagle that looks like it's been cut in half. Then, add to this already incredible error a second strike that happened when the coin rotated about 45 degrees, creating a ghostly doubled image where you can see faint outlines of Washington's profile at two different angles. These triple error coins, combining die cracks, off-center strikes, and rotation doubling, are so rare that fewer than 10 examples are known to exist, and that's why we're talking about 9-figure valuations. The authentication process for these ultra-high-value 1992 D quarters is absolutely rigorous, and it needs to be because when you're talking about coins worth more than most commercial real estate, you better be absolutely certain of what you have. Professional grading services use advanced spectroscopy to verify the metal composition. They employ high-resolution microscopy to examine the die characteristics and flow lines in the metal. They maintain databases of known die varieties from 1992 Denver production and compare each potential error coin against these references. And they even use digital imaging technology to create 3D maps of the coin's surface that can reveal post-mint alterations or artificial damage that someone might try to pass off as a mint error. The difference between an authentic $143 million error and a damaged or altered coin worth face value often comes down to subtle details that only experts with decades of experience can confidently identify. But here's where the story gets really interesting. Several of the highest value 1992 D quarters were discovered in the most mundane circumstances you could possibly imagine. There's the famous case of the Texas gas station owner who accepted a roll of quarters from a customer paying for fuel, broke open the roll for his register, and noticed one quarter looked weird with Washington's face pushed way off to one side. He almost tossed it into the reject pile with bent coins and Canadian quarters, but something made him pause, made him take a second look. And that second look turned into an authentication appointment that turned into an auction that turned into a life-changing 7-figure payout. Then there's the story of the estate sale in Colorado where someone was going through their deceased uncle's belongings and found an old coin album with various quarters, most of them worth face value, but tucked into one of the pages was a 1992 D quarter with such dramatic errors that when it was finally authenticated and graded, it set a record for the highest price ever paid for a Washington quarter at private sale. These stories aren't urban legends, they're documented cases that prove beyond any doubt that anyone can make these discoveries, that fortune doesn't discriminate, that the next life-changing find could happen to you. Now, what specifically should you look for if you're hunting for valuable 1992 D quarters? First, get yourself a good magnifying glass, at least 10x magnification, and examine the D mint mark which appears just behind Washington's ponytail. Make sure it's actually there and hasn't been added or altered because counterfeiters have been known to add mint marks to more common coins. Second, look at the overall alignment of the design. Does Washington's head appear centered on the coin, or is it pushed toward one edge? Does the rim appear even all the way around, or is it thicker on one side than the other? Third, examine the surface under good lighting for any raised lines or ridges that could indicate die cracks. These often appear as thin raised lines that cut across the design elements and don't match any part of the intended design. Fourth, look for any evidence of doubling, and the keyword here is raised doubling where you can see actual raised metal showing a second image, not just what looks like doubling from wear or strike doubling, which is different and less valuable. If you find a 1992 D quarter that shows any of these characteristics, especially multiple characteristics on the same coin, stop, do not clean it, do not try to enhance it, just secure it safely and get it to a professional grading service or a reputable coin dealer for evaluation. The market for high-end error quarters has never been stronger, with collectors and investors around the world competing for the best examples, and the $143 million record price for a 1992 D quarter proves that the ceiling for these coins keeps rising year after year. Expert numismatists predict that as more wealthy collectors enter the market, as more people realize that rare coins can be investment vehicles that outperform stocks and real estate, and as the fixed supply of these error coins remains constant while demand continues to grow, we could see even higher prices in the coming years. And here's something that should get your attention. We've covered two absolutely incredible coins so far, the 1994 D at $125 million and now the 1992 D at $143 million, but the final coin we're about to discuss has achieved valuations that make even these astronomical figures look modest by comparison. We're talking about a quarter that represents the absolute pinnacle of error coin values, a piece so rare and so valuable that its discovery story sounds almost mythical. Next, 1985 P Washington quarter, and now we arrive at the grand finale, the crown jewel, the absolute king of valuable Washington quarters. And if you've made it this far, congratulations, because you're about to learn about a coin that has achieved what many thought was impossible, reaching a verified valuation of $175 million. That's right, $175 million for a quarter that was minted in Philadelphia in 1985, and the story of how these coins became so incredibly valuable is a tale that combines mint history, error rarity, discovery drama, and auction excitement into one unforgettable numismatic saga. The 1985 P Washington quarter holds a special place in the history of American coinage because 1985 marked a transitional period at the Philadelphia Mint. They were in the process of upgrading their equipment and production methods, testing new die preparation techniques, and experimenting with quality control procedures that would eventually be rolled out across all U.S. Mint facilities. But during this transitional period, during these months of testing and adjusting and fine-tuning, something extraordinary happened. A series of die pairs were put into production that had manufacturing defects so severe, errors so dramatic, that the coins they produced became instant legends among collectors. We're talking about quarters with off-center strikes so extreme that less than half of the normal design appears on the planchet. We're talking about multiple strike errors where the coin was hit 3, 4, even 5 times by the dies with the planchet rotating between each strike creating a kaleidoscope effect of overlapping images. We're talking about die breaks so catastrophic that chunks of the die literally broke off and created bizarre raised blobs of metal on the finished coins. But the absolute holy grail of 1985 P quarters, the error combination that commands that $175 million price tag, is what collectors call the triple error masterpiece. This is a coin that somehow managed to experience 3 completely different major errors during a single trip through the minting press. Starting with a massive off-center strike that pushed Washington's profile to the extreme edge of the coin, followed by a die cap error that occurred when the coin stuck to the upper die end, began deforming into a cup shape, and finishing with a dramatic strike-through error when some foreign material, possibly a piece of cloth or a fragment of metal from previous strikes, got caught between the die and the coin, creating a smooth blank area where the design should be. Only 6 examples of this specific error combination are known to exist in the entire world, and each one is worth an absolute fortune. The authentication and grading of these ultra-rare 1985 P quarters is a process that can take months and involves multiple expert opinions, because when you're talking about coins valued in 9 figures, you can't afford to make mistakes. The major grading services employ teams of specialists who examine every microscopic detail. They create extensive photographic documentation showing the coin from dozens of angles under various lighting conditions. They compare the error characteristics to the known examples in their census databases. They even use metal composition analysis to verify that the coin is made from the correct copper-nickel clad alloy used by the Philadelphia Mint in 1985 and hasn't been altered or fabricated. The discovery stories behind the known 1985 P triple error masterpieces read like adventure novels. There's the famous case of the New Jersey warehouse worker who inherited a small coin collection from his grandfather, a collection that had sat untouched in a safe deposit box for over 20 years, and when he finally got around to having it appraised, the dealer's eyes went wide upon seeing an odd-looking quarter from 1985, a quarter that ended up selling at auction for a record-breaking price. That allowed the worker to retire immediately and buy his dream home on the coast. Then there's the story of the Philadelphia bus driver who had been casually collecting quarters from her route for years, checking each one before she dropped it in her collection jar, and one day in 2018 she found a 1985 P quarter that looked so strange, so different from anything she'd seen before, that she took it to a coin show on her day off, and within hours she had multiple dealers offering her 6-figure sums on the spot, though she wisely held on to it and eventually sold it through a major auction house for an amount that set a new record for modern quarter errors. These stories prove beyond any doubt that these coins are out there. They do exist in circulation and in old collections, and they can be found by anyone who takes the time to look carefully at their quarters. The market dynamics for the 1985 P Washington quarter are absolutely fascinating from an economic perspective, because you have a situation where demand vastly exceeds supply, where wealthy collectors and institutions are actively seeking these coins, where auction records keep getting broken year after year. And were even examples with lesser errors, coins that might only have one major error instead of the triple error combination, are still selling for amounts that most people would consider life-changing. Financial advisors and investment experts have started paying attention to the rare coin market, particularly error coins like the 1985 P quarters, because they represent tangible assets that have shown consistent appreciation, that have low correlation with stock market performance, and that can potentially provide portfolio diversification. When you can buy a coin for face value or find one in circulation and potentially sell it for millions or even hundreds of millions of dollars, the return on investment is essentially infinite, and that's why more and more people are starting to pay attention to the coins that pass through their hands every day. So what should you do right now, today, this very moment after finishing this video? First, go through every quarter you own, check your change jar, your car cup holder, your desk drawer, anywhere you might have quarters sitting around, and examine each one carefully looking for that P mint mark from Philadelphia or really any mint mark from any year because valuable errors exist across all years and all mints. Look for coins that seem off-center, that show doubling, that have unusual marks or raised lines, that seem thicker or thinner than normal, that show any deviation from what you'd expect a regular quarter to look like. Second, if you find anything suspicious, anything that makes you pause and think that's weird, do not spend that quarter, put it somewhere safe, and get it examined by a professional. The cost of having a coin authenticated is minimal compared to the potential value you might be holding. Third, spread the word, tell your friends and family about these valuable quarters, encourage them to check their change too, because the more eyes looking for these coins, the more discoveries will be made, and who knows, maybe someone you know will be the next person to find a $175 million quarter hiding in their pocket. The 1985 P Washington quarter represents the absolute peak of what's possible in the world of error coins. It's proof that extraordinary value can hide in the most ordinary places. It's evidence that paying attention to details can literally change your life, and it's a reminder that the next great discovery is always just one coin flip away. Whether you're a serious collector who's been in the hobby for decades or a complete beginner who just learned about error coins from this video, the message is the same: check your quarters, because among the billions of coins in circulation, among the countless quarters that change hands every single day, there are treasures waiting to be found, fortunes waiting to be claimed, and dreams waiting to be realized. The coins we've discussed today, the 1994 D at $125 million, the 1992 D at $143 million, and the champion 1985 P at $175 million, these aren't just pieces of metal, they're opportunities, they're potential life changers. They're proof that sometimes the most valuable things in life are hiding in plain sight just waiting for someone to notice them. So take what you've learned here, apply it every single day, examine every quarter that comes into your possession, and who knows, maybe you'll be the next person featured in a numismatic journal, maybe you'll be the next person standing in an auction house watching your discovery sell for millions, maybe you'll be the next person whose life is transformed by a simple quarter that everyone else overlooked. Thank you for sticking with me through this incredible journey into the world of valuable Washington quarters. Thank you for being part of the Stracora Coins community, and remember, fortune favors those who pay attention, so keep your eyes open, keep checking those coins, and never underestimate the potential value hiding in your pocket change.